Congresswoman, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
Great
Thank
to have you.
you.
Thanks.
So, Congressman, I'm going to ask the same thing I asked the governor. It's 100 plus days now of Donald Trump. Is this what you expected, and what does this mean for Massachusetts?
It has been 100 days that feels like 1,000 days. And what we have seen are chaos, corruption, high costs, unconstitutional behavior. It is what we anticipated and talked about and feared, but to see it play out in real time, to see the impact that I hear about every single day from people here in my district across Massachusetts, and as I travel around the country, the fear and anxiety of the people of this country as they face this very real economic peril, and their fear that our systems won't hold against this president is far worse in a short time than I think I even thought it would be.
Do you worry that our systems won't hold against the president? I know I speak for Marjorie. We do. When you have a Supreme Court, just as one example, that says facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia from El Salvador. He says in an interview with Terry Moran from ABC, I could facilitate the return, and nothing happens.
Yeah, I mean, we worry about it every day, and I think it has been part of what we have had to do, and there are two parts to that. We worry about that. We worry about the fact that this president came into office with immunity granted to him, and how he interprets that and puts that above his constitutional responsibilities. But I have to say I am also heartened by, from day one, we had to pursue a litigation strategy, over 217 cases filed. And we are winning those orders, and we are continuing to hold them accountable. But as you said, they are being pushed by this administration to the extreme, and we don't know how some of these cases will be resolved. And that's a great unknown and another source of anxiety. But I do think we should be heartened that the courts are holding, and we are seeing Trump appointees holding this administration accountable.
You know, one of my many examples of naivete on my own behalf is when there's something that Trump does, as opposed to an isolated incident that's unimaginably horrible when he talks about an individual in the most disparaging ways. This tariff thing, which I think one can objectively say is a nightmare, whether you're a Republican member of Congress or a Democratic member of Congress. I naively assume more Republicans would turn far faster and decide to side with their constituents rather than act out of fear that the president was going to badmouth them or primary them. Is that going to come, or are they going to hold the line for this guy until the whole thing implodes?
Yeah, it seems like the latter. And I have to say, there was this brief hope. I thought this is finally the line, the red line for them.
The tariff thing.
The tariffs, where we saw Senator Grassley and some others coming together and saying tariffs belong under the Constitution with Congress. And what we have here is an unconstitutional imposition of these tariffs with a completely made-up formula. But that was a brief moment, and I'll give you one example. Just yesterday, Democrats held a hearing on the impact of tariffs on small businesses. It was enraging. Just enraging to hear from people. These aren't political people. There was a woman who was running, a baby care business, a woman who's running a shoe business that she created to make high heels more comfortable.
Oh, good.
And I know, and she was just turning a profit, but she is looking at her holiday orders, and the basic boot, her high, leather boot, was $50 last Christmas. Now to order, her wholesale price is $150.
Oh, gosh.
So she's not putting orders in. And each one of these small business people, because of tariffs, and I've heard this repeated throughout roundtables we've done in my district, are looking at their whole lives being upended, and they're already letting go of employees. and they don't have a lot of employees to let go of. So the impacts, even though the real big price hikes haven't hit our shores yet, it is being felt in our small businesses and around these communities.
You know this very well. I'm sure you confront it every day. While Trump's numbers are declining, pretty horrible, the numbers for Democrats, even among Democrats, are atrocious, even worse. Are people who answer those polls and have very low regard for your fellow Democrats, are they missing something, or is it a reflect a reality that you all haven't figured out the right way to resist Trumpism?
Listen, and I'll go back to what I said earlier. People are deeply frustrated, and they're
Should they be
scared
frustrated with you and your fellow Democrats?
and anxious. And you know, that is the work that we have to do. Clearly, in the last election, listen, we heard the message that people felt like we were defenders of the status quo, and I don't think we did a good job of talking about the very real concerns and the accomplishments that we had that I am proud of and stand by around reinvesting in infrastructure, getting lead pipes out, broadband, creating union jobs, bringing chip manufacturing and high-tech manufacturing back to our shores, increasing access to healthcare, creating a green revolution. It also, we have to talk to people's concerns that they have about the cost of groceries and housing, and making sure that we are centering everything we do around that. And some people say, but that's not, you can't just talk about that. We have to talk about democracy. But if people don't feel they can be part of the American dream, if they feel that it's out of reach for them, they can't focus on bigger themes. And so we have to take this moment and show whose side we're on. And I think it is why you are seeing, with that focus, that the president's overall approval numbers are down, but his approval numbers on the economy, where we are focused, are way down, in the low 30s. It's really unheard of territory for any president.
We're talking to Katherine Clark, Massachusetts congressperson, number 2 Democrat in the U.S. House of Representatives.
You know, Congressman, when you mentioned the last election, people thinking that Democrats were defending the status quo, but there's been a lot of writing and talk since the election about democratic cities and states. We are so regulated that we can't get anything done. This wasn't Massachusetts, but the broadband that was supposed to be expanded by Joe Biden really didn't get that far. The electric vehicle chargers that were supposed to be, pushed in the Inflation Reduction Act, we've hardly put any of them out, so people don't want to get electric cars. The Fall River line, the train between Boston and Fall River, the track's been there for 30 years. We've been talking about this for 30 years. It starts, and then they have to have shuttle buses because, there's not enough people to run the train. So there's a sense that we not only just don't get it, I shouldn't say we because I'm an independent, but the Democrats don't get it, but they can't function. And we promise things in elections and then we don't produce.
Well, I think we got two things going on here. One, we have those very real accomplishments that we have to take a hard look, and we're the first ones to say, if you look at our immigration systems, our permitting systems, our taxation systems, they aren't working for people.
Yeah.
They aren't working for people. People feel the system's rigged against them because it is. And you just take one example that a lot of ink has been spilled over, but it is something we have to look at, which is high-speed rail in California. Billions of dollars, and we still don't have a system.
Yeah.
So instead of taking what we're seeing from this White House and his, army of allegiance that we see in the House, is that then we scrap all that and we go over here. And we have to come to the American people and say, let's put you forward. Let's put you in the center of what we're doing, and let's work on solutions. But if you can't acknowledge that the systems aren't working well, you can never get to those solutions. And what I think the danger of this moment is that they're moving in the total other direction. Let's get rid of all regulation that gives us clean water. Let's take a rounding up of people that may or may not have criminal backgrounds and disappear them. instead of working on an immigration system that works for everyone and keeps everybody safe. So we can't allow this administration to go so far the other way that we actually move backwards instead of working to fix and create efficiencies in the system we have.
Katherine Clark, you wrote a piece, I think it's in this morning's Washington Post.
Yeah,
The title
I
of
love
which
this.
is, so did I, Women Are Having Fewer Kids. It's Not a Mystery Why. Fill in the blanks for people who haven't read it yet, please.
Recently the White House said, hey, look what's going on. Women can't have children. How about we give them $5,000? See
Yeah,
if that,
that'll get you 2
see
months
if
of
that does
daycare.
it.
You're lucky.
And this just points out the obvious, which is the lived experience of families right now. For people who would like to have another child or a child, it is often just too expensive. And we can't continue to say to families, at the same time, they're taking away Medicaid, this unbelievable cut to the biggest insurance program, that health program that we have in our country, that we're going to take that away for tax cuts for the very wealthiest. It's
Are we, though? Isn't Johnson, the speaker, saying we're not going to do that?
Well, we will see.
We will see.
They voted twice to do it, so
Okay.
let's put
You're
their votes where
suspicious.
their mouth is. But we're saying to moms, they need help affording and finding childcare. They need to have a place where they can have a safe birth and receive prenatal care. Now, 1/3 of every county in this country, there's no obstetric care.
Yeah.
There's no place to go have a baby. And then we move into paid leave policies. Just all these fundamentals of giving families and moms the tools for success. So the point of this piece was this isn't that hard to figure out how stacked against families this system has become.
Katherine Clark, we just got a text from somebody who said, once again, I'm paraphrasing Jim and Marjorie, you're not telling the whole story. For example, Trump's a strong supporter of IVF. I'm so glad that was brought up. My understanding is he does an executive order on IVF, please correct me if I'm wrong, saying we're going to expand IVF, doesn't change one word of policy, doesn't add $1 to the funding for. Is that an accurate statement?
It is accurate, except now we're leaving out that he's cutting health care for people. How are you supposed to even be able to afford it? But there's absolutely no protection. And it is absolutely part of what people are saying. They've written it down in Project 2025, which this administration is working through and implementing on an hourly basis. That IVF is as much up for grabs as any other reproductive health in this country.
By the way, one of our colleagues, Zoe, just wrote us tonight, he also fired a team of scientists at the CDC who are dedicated to conducting research on IVF, which is just incredible. One of the things I think that people were excited about when you and Hakeem Jeffries sort of took over, I don't know if you're allowed to say took over, well, you did, took over the Democratic leadership, is you were younger. As much as people admired Nancy Pelosi and others, they were octogenarians. A lot of people felt they weren't the perfect face of the party. The Senate is really old. Dick Durbin, 80 years old, said he's not running for re-election. Chuck Schumer is not only older, not older than 80, but older, but also upset a lot of Democrats when he basically abandoned House members, I would argue, and many of his fellow Democrats for buying into that budget thing. Ed Markey with us the other day, we asked him. He said he's like Paul McCartney. He'll be 80s in his next term. Is part of the Democratic messaging problem, is it some of the leaders are still just too old for the average American?
Listen, I think we have some of the most charismatic leaders in our caucus, and many of them are young. You look at a Jasmine Crockett, a Robert Garcia, an AOC, and lots of others that aren't household names, but are doing an incredible job. But we also have people with invaluable experience. And so I don't think it's age itself, but are you staying current? Have you become an institutionalist, or are you fighting for the people of this country? Can you acknowledge when something isn't working for them? And are you fighting with everything you've got?
Can I interrupt you? Because this is important breaking news. A federal judge has ordered the immediate release of Rumeysa Ozturk, the Tufts PhD
Oh, wow.
candidate, whose sudden arrest by federal immigration agents, as we all know, snatched from the streets of Somerville. If you want to comment on that, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted people to know that.
That is a great
Do you
interruption.
think it will happen?
Well, we'll see. I mean, I assume there'll be appeal.
That's what I worry about now, that these
I don't
federal
think
judge
there's a
order
stay.
things.
We were just talking about this actually
Yeah.
this morning because I couldn't understand why it was May 16th. She needs to be released. She needs to come back to New England. And it is...
Oh, you mean May 16th in terms of the
It
Vermont
was like,
return date?
let's
Right,
get
right,
her
yeah,
back
yeah, yeah.
to Vermont
Yeah.
by May 16th. It's like
Yeah.
they were able to get her to Louisiana almost instantly.
very
Yes.
fine
And
point.
it is time for her to come home. This is a young woman who is a Fulbright scholar.
Full-price scholar did nothing wrong.
She doesn't even have a parking ticket. And if you cannot write an op-ed in a student newspaper in this country, none of us have a constitutional right.
You know, before you go, we're almost out of time here. A lot of people are frustrated. They don't know what to do because they're very upset. There have been protests. There was a hands-off protest that was massive. That was a few weeks ago. There are little protests in little towns all around the country. You know, you've run for office several times. What do you think works? What should people be doing that are upset and want change and don't want these tariffs and don't want these cuts, et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera? What should people do?
Listen, it is all the power in this country. There are powerful people in Washington. We know the power of the presidency. It still resides with the people. It still resides with the people.
So big protests?
And we need big protests. We need small protests. We need letters to the editors. Still, one of the most effective ways to influence politics is talk to your neighbors. Because more than any news source, all apologies to
It's okay.
GBH, more than any news source, more than any politician, it is a family member, a friend, a coworker. And so whether you are part of volunteering for an organization that speaks to you, or you are just an active member of your community, if I have one message is, know your voice, know your power. And we've actually started turning our town halls into also having activism fairs so that people have a bunch of organizations that are there and present after we have our discussion and answer questions so they can go out and find ways to plug in that make sense to them. So that is, we need to litigate, we need to do everything we can in Congress, and we need to mobilize together as communities.
Katherine Clark, we really appreciate your
thank you.
time today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very, very much. We much appreciate you being here,
Thank
Congresswoman.
you.